and PvP.
Absolutely. Hey, let's go to our phone lines and talk to Strife, who wants to talk about WoW versus FF14. Strife, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for calling.
Hey, dude.
All right.
That sounded very disdainful, Nico.
Oh my gosh.
No, I like Strife. I miss Strife.
Whoa, shots fired.
Oh, Strife, I just wanted to, by the way, just really quick, thank you and say I had a lot of fun the other day when we were doing that casual raid for Antorus the other day in World of Warcraft. So thanks for that, by the way.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's a good time.
So what's up?
All right, so basically, kind of to expand a bit about what you guys were talking about earlier, and Nero, you've been talking about how 14 is very inflexible, and I agree. And, you know, Nika, you're saying, well, I don't see why they couldn't just, throw Mythic Plus into this system. I think there's something you're missing there. Basically, when it comes to the way dungeons are designed in WoW versus 14, there's something fundamental there. Did you know that almost every raid in FF14, you can go find a chart online for exactly which second every mechanic occurs?
Really? It's that pattern?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
I have not been able to find that for any fight in WoW for the last 3 expansions.
I don't know if that's true, man. That's really difficult to predict RNG based mechanics in the last 2 tiers of Stormblood.
Yes,
but the thing is that the RNG mechanics that exist are still scripted to be like 1 of 4 RNG. So It's like it could be this or this or this, but if it's this, then this is what's going to follow it. Like it's scripted RNG too.
Okay,
it's very
WoW is not like I've never raided in WoW, so I wouldn't be able to say any otherwise. But
basically, it comes down to there's a lot more breakpoints based on health percentages in WoW, where if your DPS is good enough, you can break the mechanics from happening. You can transition to another phase early and things like that.
Final Fantasy has that also.
Yeah, it's the same.
Right, but the difference is that there's a lot more mechanics that may or may not happen that it's RNG, you roll the dice, whereas every time I've done a raid in 14, it's felt incredibly rigid. And this isn't just the raids, this transitions down to the dungeons, which, as you know, don't really have much difficulty. Mm-hmm. So what would happen is if they tried to do a Mythic Plus system, which is basically let's add 2 RNG mechanics or 3 and put a timer on it and make it scale up harder and harder every time. If they tried to do that, the fact of the matter is there's no way you can take a different route in the way the 14 dungeons are designed. It's a linear path. There's no way for you to choose to go around this mob and kill these sets of mobs instead. There's no choice.
That is, I think, one of the biggest problems with the dungeons outside of, Total Rock. You are locked into one path only.
One hallway.
And it never changes. The fact that, FF14 is probably the least dynamic MMO that I've ever played in my life, I think that's a major strike against, because the dynamic part is what makes things interesting. And even going back into 2.0, when I was so super enthused on this game and just ready to play it all the time, it did have a hypnotic effect when you would play it, where you would feel like after maybe 5-6 hours
you're gonna fall asleep, exhausted.
Yeah, and it would be like in the middle of the day. Whereas and again, granted, I'm still sub 100 hours in ESO. Granted, not very far. I think I'm like 87, 89 hours plugged into ESO. I don't get that same hypnotic effect playing other MMOs that I do with FF14.
Well, and also to Strife's point about the difference in the way the raid mechanics work, when we do a new raid, even if they present them in a different way, like the 24-man when you're fighting Belias and he does a little charge from around the edge, that's the same thing we've been seeing since Ifrit, right?
Right.
Sometimes they might change the graphics a little bit, but those are still just tremors from Titan. Mm-hmm. And we only get 4 bosses at a time in those. But in World of Warcraft, they give you 3 bosses at a time, and you're going from one to another. The mechanics can be so vastly different that you're not just looking at it and saying, "Oh, that's just that thing from the other guy again."
Right.
I don't
like people calling out moves from Sleece, like Sleece positions for what was it, the turn 3 of Omega,
mm-hmm.
because we've seen it before somewhere else.
Right. And to Kalo's point, it's not even just 3 bosses at a time. That's just for the one set of difficulty. Normally, it's an environment with 10 or 11 bosses.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. That was for in Final Fantasy 14. When a patch comes out, you get 4 bosses. That's it.
Right.
In World of Warcraft, for an entire tier, here's like 13 bosses.
Yeah.
Right. But here's the kicker. Let's say you're not really that hardcore into raiding. Let's say you don't give a shit about endgame. WoW still has an advantage. ESO still has an advantage. Guild Wars 2 still has an advantage. For Guild Wars 2 and ESO, it looks like the PvP is incredibly strong. And ESO has done pretty good work, it seems like. But again, I haven't played it myself yet. For some of their dungeons and raids, especially I heard Clockwork Tower, or whatever it's called, Clockwork City, is incredible. And then Guild Wars 2 has finally started to add raids to do in case you get bored of PvP, although I still think
Guild Wars 2 has had raids for a long time.
Yeah, they added it in Heart of Thorns. They didn't launch with it, right? Was that it?
I'm not sure, but they've had raids for years.
Okay. I just know it was a newer edition. It wasn't there in the beginning, but that's fine. Either way, the point is that those 2 games have this really strong PvP presence. They've just started to evolve like some of their other presences in other spaces like PvE, and it's really good, right? It's quality. You have a variety of things to do on top of all that story content. When it comes to WoW, you have the Mythic Plus system, which we've talked about before. You have Battlegrounds, you have Arenas, which is like Feast in 14, but not Cancer. And then you also have World Quest.
Well done.
So like, and the world quests, right, is this system, to Kalo's point earlier, that Blizzard experimented with. They brought it into Legion, and they tested it out in Warlords of Draenor as these bonus objectives while you level up, and then they would disappear when you hit level cap. And then in Legion, they made it an entire system, kind of like Fates, but they actually attached rewards you cared about to it.
Yes, incentivizing.
Right. So that every 3 hours on the map, your world quest would change. Some would last for a week, some would last for a day, others would last 3 hours. It varies. And you always have something to do. So you can't feel forced to do dailies every day because it's impossible for you to keep up.
Not to mention, world quests are essentially what dailies used to be, because for the rep grinds now, you're doing world quests, but you don't feel like you're going to the same NPC every time doing your 5 quests and then fucking off for the day. And there's now actually people around you that are also doing them that you're teaming up with, and to the point that you were making in ESO when you're out doing your own thing, as people just sort of show up and make the world feel alive. If you want to team up with them, you can.
Yeah.
That's a big boon.
It's engaging MMO content.
Yes, right. Exactly.
And it actually solves problems too, because the problem with the traditional daily system was always that, okay, I have 20 dailies I can do every day. So it started to feel like a chore.
Oh, I remember that.
I got to do my 20 dailies every day. Now it's like, okay, yeah, good luck trying to do every world quest as it refreshes every few hours. You'd be an insane person. So this actually, in a weird way, freed people from that obligation while still giving the people who wanted to go hardcore plenty of things to do.
Well, and again, when you talk about like having that many dailies, like what is a daily actually like? What point does that serve? It gets somebody to log into the game, which is the end goal of the game, right? Like the game that's what the game designer wants. That's not necessarily what the player wants, right? And I do feel like that's got to be a big part of the conversation, and a big part of the conversation that the devs have to have with themselves is this something that I want? Am I trying to motivate to have the player do something that I want, or is the player going to be naturally motivated because it's fun, right? Like that there's a difference between those two different things.
Well, the most cleverly designed stuff is stuff that they want you that accomplish both at once.
Exactly. Yes.
I'm going to make content that I want you to play, that you're going to love playing and want to play yourself.
Well, and I think one of the reasons that the world quests did that so well, because back when when it used to just be dailies, you'd log on to get your rep and they would always just give gold. But if you didn't need that rep anymore, you didn't need those daily quests anymore. Now everything in some way, shape, or form comes from world quests, whether it's rep, whether it's new gear, whether it's some currency to get better in some way. it's all there. I find myself going to Argus and being like, all right, which of these is going to give me what I need, and I'm not going to, touch the other ones.
Okay, so in WoW though, how quickly, how much investment does it take to feel like you've run out of upgrades to do? Because that's, I think, something that all of us have hit in FF14, where if we're staying current on, grinding for tomes, and now we've got all of our tome gear, like right now, dude, I got all of my tome gear from the last patch. The only thing that I'm logging in to do in FF14 is to do Lighthouse once a week to get my upgrade piece to upgrade my gear to 370. Otherwise, because raiding doesn't interest me in the least, at least until the next couple of mini patches. I feel like there's really not much for me to do in FF14. I'm not even doing experts because it's like, what the fuck is the point? I don't need the tomes.
Okay, so where I'm at as far as gearing goes, because I am still doing quests and just trying to, basically the reason that you're playing through ESO. I'm just doing quests and trying to get caught up on lore type stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Where I'm currently at though, I do have good enough gear to where if I wanted to now, I could start running like the normal raids. Maybe I could do heroic stuff. I think I'm almost at 930 item level Strife, if you could equate that. But I'm at a point. Yeah, so I'm at a point now where the way that I was getting gear, the 910 item level, everything's at least 910. But because WoW has that sort of random, what was it, Titan Forging, I think it's called, where when you get a piece of gear, there's a chance that a roll will happen that could upgrade at 5 levels. Then there's a chance another one could, up to a certain point.
Sure.
So even though everything I have is at least item level 910, I'm still going through and doing these world quests to get the currency to buy this gear, because when I open it, chance it could be better than what the 910 actually is. So it's something that's sort of keeping you going, and it's this weird RNG factor that I want to log on each day and be like, can I get that upgrade? Because when it pops up item upgrade and you look and it's like a 950, like that's a good feeling.
It's like a shiny Pokemon.
It is the shiny Pokemon feeling.
Oh, go on.
I'm sorry. And I was going to say, even in your, let's say you were playing WoW, right?
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Right.
And you're doing your world quests. You get up to where Kahlo is. You start to cap out. You know what? I don't think world quests are that efficient anymore. You're doing them for money, but you're not really doing them for gear, right? What would happen at that point, since you don't like raiding, is you'd have a choice. You want to go do battlegrounds with objectives? You want to go do arena? Let's say you hate PvP. You can still do dungeons. Okay, you want to hop into something quick? You can queue up for a daily heroic. It's kind of like an expert roulette in FF. It's quick and easy, no big deal. Oh, you want something challenging? Okay, go do a mythic dungeon. You can only do them once a week.
Right.
Wait, you beat the mythic dungeon? Here's a keystone. Go do it on level 2. Okay, I guess I'll do that. And you just keep upgrading that keystone, or getting together with your guildmates and friends and getting their keystones and doing these dungeons that get harder and harder. And every week the affixes change. Every week the RNG things that could happen to you change. So even if you don't like raiding, you can go do that. And the people who do like raiding, when it's not a raid night, guess what? They have an activity to do with their raid friends.
I think that one of the things that you got to say, like you clearly talk about between the two games, is that there's the amount of content and like the differences in content between the games is fairly similar when you're talking about doing a dungeon or doing a raid or doing a 24-man or playing PvP.
Right.
But the reasons to want to do that are vastly different between what you're explaining as World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy XIV. And that's absolutely a huge difference in whether a player is going to continue to play it or not.
Yeah. And
in Final Fantasy XIV, like, I'll be very honest, like that's what you guys are talking about right now is the reason why I stopped playing Final Fantasy XIV daily. It's the reason why I stopped deciding to stream it full time, was because I felt like I got to that point where I saw repeatable mechanics in raids, and one of the main draws for me for Final Fantasy XIV was progression raiding. And when it took me 1 week to beat an entire 6 months worth of raids, because we only get new raids every 4 to 6 months, that was a big turnoff to me. What am I going to continue to log in and do my dailies? Am I going to continue to play a broken ass PvP system that has robots and cheaters?
Well,
like,
Joe, now if you logged in, you could help fish people set up a Far Eastern festival.
Yeah,
not interested.
Super
in my best cloud voice possible. Not interested.
No, and I definitely think that is like the stagnation in FF14 is, I think, its biggest biggest drawback, whether it's the stagnation in a certain in a certain event, because all of the events are fairly compartmentalized from one another, right? Or whether it's I've kind of capped out and now I don't feel like there's anything for me to do to log in every day. I think that those are both very negative sentiments and can really kind of end up spelling the death of your MMO and your player base, right?
Yeah.
So, it's... And I appreciate the people in the chat who are like, oh, well, you guys should do
the ultimate mode.
Oh my god, like 5 people have done that, and I'm about to flip my computer.
That's cool, man. Like I'll talk about Ultimate because I was in a raid group that progressed through Ultimate, and if you're talking about Ultimate, you're still talking about a very small one piece of content. One piece of content, doing it over and over and over again until you complete it once.
Yeah,
and then you've got your weapon, and you never do it again.
Exactly.
Like that it's still, and I'll be very honest. Like that one piece of content frustrated my raid group to the point where I got kicked and was fucking disrespected to the point where I didn't want to raid with them anymore or raid at all in Final Fantasy because I wasn't good enough as a 99 percentile fucking dragoon. Jesus. And the entire raid static broke up because of that one piece of content.
That's fun.
That is not constructive to a video game.
No, it's not.
That's a killing
and even if that is compelling content for someone, one
piece of gear,
extreme end game raid should not be the only compelling content in it.
And one piece of gear shouldn't be the only piece of meat that they're dangling out for you to want to do it either. Absolutely. This is the. I mean, I've made this suggestion I don't know how many fucking times, but if you had a set of gear that clearly outclassed everything, it was better than the raid gear, it was better than the current tome gear, and that shit was RNG'd into drop pools at very, very, very low drop rates, sprinkled between different events, it would be enough to incentivize participation in a variety of activities in FF14. But no, because the Final Fantasy XIV dev team has to program every fight so that the item level cap is taken into account, and it can be done in a vacuum with their small dev team to be able to work out the mechanics, then it doesn't fit into their little box to put out for content. And that, I think, is extremely frustrating because at the core of it, that says bad dev design.
Well, it's crazy because you can actually compare BDO and Final Fantasy on the two opposite ends of that spectrum, with how little RNG Final Fantasy has in its progression and how way too much RNG BDO has in its progression. And it's like there is a happy medium. It sounds like WoW actually has a pretty good system where you just log in, and if you play the normal stuff you normally play, there's a chance for you to get even better gear.
And if you put more time into it, that chance increases. Yeah.
Well, but Final Fantasy is way too scheduled, monotonous content. And it's just, we can expect everything that's coming.
I mean, I understand that basically what I'm describing is the Legion Legendaries strife, as you just pointed out in chat. But the thing is that has been very compelling and has worked very well for World of Warcraft. And to me, it just, like I said, to me, it speaks more to the ability for the dev team to develop compelling content as opposed to, worries of balance or anything like that.
And by the way, as successful as the Legion Legendaries are, Blizzard has looked at it and realized that there were some negative consequences that those had, and going into Battle for Azeroth, they're taking out all the negative stuff and taking what works, then re-putting it into a new system.
But that's exactly what Blizzard is doing that Final Fantasy seems very reluctant to do, is they're putting it out there and they're letting their community sit with it, deal with it, and figure it out, and then going, okay, how do we refine that into a better system moving forward? Not everything is going to be perfect that even Blizzard does for World of Warcraft. The fact that they make mistakes and then subsequently learn from their mistakes seems to be the thing that the FF14 dev team is fundamentally afraid to do.
Well, it's tough because I feel like Final Fantasy XIV dev team has gotten way too used to reacting to the community instead of creating content for the community.
Absolutely.
I think that's a big problem, man, because when you get into this position of like, hey, is it too hard? Is it too soft? Let me make a decision. You keep telling me what you want to do, but I just can't seem to get it right.
Yeah.
Instead of them just saying, hey, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And you guys can play it or not. And,
last point, Strife, and then we got to let you go.
Sorry, on that point, Joe, there was actually an excellent article written by one of the WoW community managers a while back about how Blizzard can't always just cater to the community because you never know, and it's a vocal minority. And that's why it's so important for the community members to any dev team, Blizzard, Square, doesn't matter, to give detailed feedback. Not that something's bad, not that something's good, but how something makes them feel and what the specific issue they're having is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the craziest part about MMOs is no matter what happens, when something changes, people are going to complain, and that you can't change that no matter what. And there's a bell curve. There's a bell curve of people who aren't engaged. There's the bell curve of people who are unbelievably engaged, who've spent the money on the Founders Pack and have been playing every second of every blinking moment of every minute since the game's come out. You've got the 80% of casuals that just want to have fun in the middle of it. So the largest population of people that aren't interested or aren't engaged as much as the hardcore people that are playing it every day. So whose perspective are you going to take? If you take that small percentage of top line 10% players, it's going to piss off 80% of the player base. You take the 80%, you're going to piss off the people that are the probably most influential and vocal part of the game, that are going to go out on Twitch and on forums and on Reddit and bash your fucking game for blowing it up.
Yes.
So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Well, but not only that, I mean, I think that FF14, you can even take that one step further, where with Stormblood, it felt like they were at a point where they needed to switch their marketing tactic from getting new players into the game to retaining the player base that's already there. And it sort of felt like, with all of the marketing around Stormblood, why does Square Enix value someone who hasn't been paying their bills for the better part of 2 years over someone who, like me, has been very dedicated and has never lapsed in his sub, looking for to want more out of the fucking game that I've been paying through the teeth for. You know what I mean? Like, why is someone who has never even shelled out the $40 for the fucking game more important than me? I don't understand that, and I don't think that I ever got a good answer on that. And I hope that as we move forward to 5.0, Square Enix starts to realize that there's just a limited amount of people that you're going to be able to get into the door, and you're going to start seeing diminishing returns the more you start designing this game for even someone who is going to be coming to it fresh. Like, there's got to be stuff for them to do now that you've built that. Fine, it's there. Let them experience that when they start the game. Now move on and focus your development to the people who have been paying your sub.
Yeah, it's one of the saddest parts of the MMO actual video game business.
Yeah,
is because the new user and the new customer they're always going to want to market to them more than the fan already. Because if you're a fan already, doesn't matter whether I like it or I don't, I'm probably going to be interested in it when new shit comes out. Like,
still playing it. Yeah, I'm
still going to play it, dude. Like, I will not stop paying for Final Fantasy 14, even though I'm not playing it. Like, I will always pay for my sub. It's on active renewal. It's never going to go down.
Still paying for FF11.
Yeah,
dude. I'm a fan, and it's a crazy thing. It's legitimately insane for me to say that out loud and think about it for like right now, because like I'm already a fan of the game. I love it so much. It made such an impact on my life that I can't say I'm not ever going to stop playing it. But like, I might not play it as much is what I'm saying.
But at the same time,
but like at the same time, they're getting your subs. So do they care that you don't log on?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's oh man, that's the shrewd business point of it. So I really think that it'd be really interesting to see if Square Enix has had the foresight into that. The way that players are playing their game now, to see if 5.0 actually is going to introduce content that is in reaction to that, or whether they're just going to see more of this. We're going to see more of the same.
I predict more of the same, but I'm at my core, I'm a cynic. Let's talk about combat here for a second, because Nika, we forced you to play Terra.
Oh, I was hoping we'd get through an episode and we wouldn't need her to say anything about it.